Hello everyone, I am Nelson Eduardo Correa from the Universidad Nacional Autónoma de Honduras. I am presenting today on behalf of my co-authors, Heidi Yelni Diaz from the Universidad Veracruzana in Mexico, and Juan Manuel Castro from the Universidad Pontificia de Salamanca in Spain. When looking at how EFL university teachers integrate information and communication technologies into the classroom, it is very important to mention that there was a world sanitary event which forced an unprecedented and rapid shift to emergency remote teaching worldwide. This transition exposed significant gaps in teachers' digital skills and pedagogical training. However, it also accelerated the adoption of digital tools. When in person classes resumed, many teachers continued to use a lot of technology devices. This persistence raised a new concern in literature, which is technological dependence. Technological dependence is seen by the excessive use on digital devices, often leading to a progressive loss of autonomy in daily activities. Our study had three clear objectives. First, to describe the frequency and nature of reproductive and constructive learning practices. Second, to describe the cooperative strategies and assessment methods that these teachers implement through digital platforms. And third, analyze the relationships among reproductive learning, constructive learning, cooperation, and assessment practices in the context of ICT integration. Our study adopted a quantitative approach following a descriptive, non-experimental, and cross-sectional design. The target population consisted of 29 university EFL teachers, 20 from the Universidad Nacional Autónoma de Honduras, 5 from the Universidad Veracruzana in Mexico, and 4 from the Universidad Pontificia de Salamanca in Spain. The instrument was a validated questionnaire developed by Pozo et al. In 2021, containing 36 Likert scale items across 9 dimensions. The questionnaire was administered electronically via Google Forms. Data analysis involved two stages. First, descriptive statistics using SPSS version 26, and second, Spiderman's rank order correlations to assess relationships among pedagogical dimensions. I'll present our main findings. Reproductive practices dominate daily routines, while constructive practices are often avoided or are not frequent. For constructive verbal learning, over half of the teachers reported that never use it. This was the highest never percentage across all dimensions. In contrast, only 17.2% never use reproductive verbal learning. For procedural learning, 55.2% of teachers practice reproductive procedural tasks monthly, while 65.5% of teachers never ask students to solve problems using creative software like Canva or Padlet. For attitudinal learning, reproductive practices like ensuring an adequate weekly word love are done daily by 41.4% of teachers. However, constructive attitudinal practices, such as co-creating virtual communication guidelines, are never done by 48.3% of teachers. For cooperation, monthly use is most common, but alarmingly, between 31% and 41% of teachers never use ICT for structured collaborative activities like group debates or joint reports. For assessment, reproductive assessment is deeply integrated. 44.8% of teachers upload graded homework daily, and 37.9% prepare online quizzes daily. However, constructive assessment practices like creating forums or self evaluation are never used by 44.8% of teachers. Let me provide specific examples from our findings. Regarding verbal learning, most widely used reproductive practices is preparing presentations throughout different text presenting tools, with the vast majority of teachers using them daily and non-reporting never. When referring to procedural learning, reproductive practices like providing step-by-step instructions in PowerPoints are done daily or weekly by most teachers. Nevertheless, constructive procedural learning, such as giving students an open problem to plan their own research, is done daily by a very small minority of teachers. More shocking, most teachers never present students with a problem to solve using different software, and nearly half never ask students to explain how they conducted an internet search. Regarding attitudinal learning, reproductive practices focus on academic productivity, ensuring a steady weekly workload is done daily or weekly by the great majority of teachers. When talking about assessment, reproductive methods are the norm. Uploading homework and returning it graded is done by the vast majority of teachers daily or weekly. Online quizzes with automatic correct answers are also used daily by more than a third of teachers. However, constructive assessment, such as creating forums for self evaluation or task objectives, is never used by nearly half of teachers and done daily by only a small fraction. What does this tell us? Assessment emphasizes correct answers, grading efficiency, and content recall, rather than metacognitive skills, peer feedback, or deep understanding. When talking about the Spearman correlations, we find a strong positive correlations between reproductive and constructive practices. This is the most important and surprising result of our study. The Spearman correlation reveals predominantly positive and significant relationships among pedagogical dimensions. There is a strong positive correlation between reproductive learning and constructive learning. Also, there is a strong positive correlation between constructive learning and cooperation, as well as a strong positive correlation between reproductive learning and constructive assessment. The only non significant relationship was between cooperation and reproductive assessment, indicating that collaborative practices are statistically independent from traditional quiz based evaluation. What do these correlations mean? They mean that teachers who frequently use reproductive ICT tools like PowerPoint, online quizzes, and virtual platforms also tend to adopt constructive strategies, promoting cooperation and use of formative assessments. These practices do not oppose each other, they coexist within an integrated pedagogical system. Here are the main conclusions from our study. First, reproductive learning practices are indeed more common in daily EFL teaching through ICT integration. Constructive cooperative, and reflective practices are less frequent and often avoided entirely, particularly in procedural and attitudinal domains. Second, and most importantly, the strong positive correlation between reproductive and constructive practices demonstrate that these two approaches coexist rather than conflict. Teachers who use technology heavily do so in a balanced, multidimensional way. This finding challenges the idea that technological dependence necessarily leads to pedagogical regression. Third, the only significant disconnect is between cooperation and reproductive assessment, suggesting that collaborative digital activities are not well aligned with traditional quiz based evaluation methods. This points to a specific area for pedagogical development. Here you can appreciate the most relevant references used. We will be more than happy to answer your questions and comments. Thank you very much.